Hi, this is Sean Hodge, editor of Vector Toots, and today in this screencast, I'll be going over the tutorial Create a Vibrant 3D Pixel Type Treatment, written by my good buddy Rype, Ryan Putnam, otherwise known as Rype. First of all, let's take a look at the tutorial before we get in, get dirty with our hands, and actually build the tutorial. First, we'll go over the overview, and it's always a good idea to skim the tutorial and see what it's all about before we get started. First of all, take a look at the final image. You can see that it's some nice, clean, bright 3D text placed in the sky. Nice, simple, but attractive illustration. Now let's get into what's actually going to happen. You're going to need to download a font. It is freely available from the font, and the name is 04B_03. Great name for a font, I guess. Not something to name your children after. Then we're going to open up Illustrator. First of all, make sure that font's installed. That's something I've already done. And then you're going to open up Illustrator, type in the text. Then we're going to start using the 3D Extrude and Bevel options. And what this is going to do is give a 3D effect to the text. And you can see that this effect, it is an effect. It turns out a little bland. So what the next step will be to expand it, and then Rype shows us how to select each face of the text, which there's 3 faces, and to apply individual brighter, more attractive gradients to them. He shows us in great detail that makes it really easy for you to follow along, and I'll be demonstrating that once we get started. You can see all the way down here the final result, much better than the output of the effect. Thereafter, he wants to take this further and place a background, radial gradient, and then control the radial gradient. You can see here he's setting up the illustration pretty much based on a rule of thirds. Here's the center third, the right third, and the left third here is where the focal point is being placed, which makes sense because you would read the text from left to right. Very excellent place to start the focal point would be with this V. He then takes this further, makes an ellipse that he then is going to apply a radial to, and he does this with a really smooth effect. Super quick to do, something that I didn't know until I saw this tutorial how to do this. I would have tried drawing it or something. So, I mean, this is a huge time saver. Really pay attention when you get to step 19 if you haven't seen this done before. And then he just drops it down with the transparency. But again, it's all really centering this as the focal point of the illustration. Next, we're going to create some just basic ellipses and bring those together. Drop it behind the text, make it look like clouds. Add some more cloud sets, give them some gradients to add some dimensionality to it, and make it show that it's behind the main clouds. Add some interest as well. And then something that we do in quite a few tutorials here on Vector Toots is first create an ellipse with a radial gradient. Then you squish it down so it maintains the way that the radial is placed. And then just drop it underneath something, in this case the text. And this is going to be done multiple times. And it just makes it feel like the text is resting on these clouds. And you can see that's the final image. Now we're going to actually start the tutorial. And I'm going to show you step by step what we just went over. First of all, just want to make sure everything fits well in the window. This is the final illustration from Rype, but we're going to start our own. He did use a letter size, so standard letter size, but then set your units to pixels. You can name this file anything that you want, really. I'm going to call it Vector Toots. Hit OK. I'm going to hit Command 1. What that does is it brings it down to, same as going to view actual size. So, which keeps this in the bounds of the window. I'm going to actually resize this so it fits well, and then hit Command 1 again. So it fits well within this screencast. I'm going to minimize what Rype's done here. I'm going to actually get started with the tutorial now. Of course, you should have already downloaded and installed the font. And so I'm going to get started in and type the text in. Hit T for the text tool, click on it, type in vector toots, hit Command A, selects all the text as long as you had part of it selected already. I'm going to drag the character palette in so you can see what's going on. And I'm going to roll up and I'm going to select the font for BO3. Now that we've got that selected, actually let's keep the character palette there. And for now I'm going to set it to 140. That's too big. Let me manually resize this. Go ahead and grab the selection tool and center it a bit. Hit Option Shift, which will, what it'll do is constrain it to the center. If you just hold down Shift, it will constrain it off to the left. But if you hold down Shift, if you hold down, let me resize it. If you hold down Shift and Option, it will constrain it to the center, so you can figure out what is an ideal size. You can always resize it later, though. And let's go back to the tutorial, the written tutorial. See, the next step is to change the color to orange. So let's go ahead and do that. Dragging the swatch palette over here. Make sure it's your text is selected, and give it an orange color. The next step is to apply the 3D extrude and bevel options. You can see here he's got an extrude depth of 40. The rest is actually just set at a default. When I ran through this earlier, I found that for whatever reason, an extrude depth of 40 was actually just a little bit too big. Oh, it's turned out good this time. Let me check this out. 40. Let me try 20. I'm going to do 25. But just as with all tutorials, adjust it to your liking, to the effect that you want to achieve. In this case, I'm going to use 25, and the tutorial he uses 40. Once that's done, let's move on to the next step. And he's just going to expand the appearance. So you can go to Object, Expand Appearance. Now what we want to do is get into the coloring of the different faces. So if you hit Y, that grabs your magic wand tool. Now let me hit Enter. After you grab the magic wand tool, hit Enter. Now you can see it's set to 1. That's the tolerance that I found was necessary, but by default it was set to 20. So if I go to select this, it grabs everything. So pay attention to this tolerance here. What you want in this case is a tolerance of 1. And then what you want to do, I'll zoom in here so you can see a little bit better. I hit Y again. I hit the Z tool, Z button to zoom it, and then went ahead and zoomed in. And then Y again to grab the magic wand tool. And then when I click on this face, you can see that it's grabbed all of the text. Let me zoom back out. I'll hit Command 1, fill the screen again. Z, and take another look at it. We're going back to the tutorial to move on to the next step. Actually, with this step, he applies the linear gradient. So let's do that. Go ahead and close the magic wand options. Grab the gradient, and I'm going to grab the swatch palette. And what we're going to do is, while it's selected, go ahead, drag this over, and there we go. That applies a linear gradient. Now in the next step, what he does is talks about really controlling these gradients. You can see that this type is on an angle, so if I just change it to 90, it doesn't quite give the look that we really want. what you want to do is actually control each individual gradient. So go ahead and hit, grab the direct selection tool, hit A, click off on the canvas to deselect the text. Then go ahead and select the front face of the V on the left, hold down the shift key, and select the rest. And then what we're going to do is grab the, I think it's called the gradient tool, right? Yeah, gradient tool, just hit G, hold down the shift key to constrain it, start at the top of the letter, and drag to the bottom. And all we're going to do is repeat this process. I'm holding down shift, hitting G, dragging to the bottom. Really controlling these gradients is important to get the effect that we're looking for. So I'm just going to apply this to each one of these letters, starting at the top of the letter, dragging down to the bottom. And again, A for the direct selection tool, that time I grabbed it all. And then G for the gradient tool, hold down shift, drag down to the bottom. And I'm just continuing with this. And the last one, grab the gradient tool, drag down to the bottom. Okay, now we're ready to move on to the next step. Oh, that was the next step. Apply it to all of the letters. And we're going to go back to the Magic Wand tool, which is Y, hit Y. Again, hit enter, and you can see that the tolerance is at 1, which will work really well. This time we're going to select, let me see, I think it's the top. Yeah, it's the top of the face. And once we've selected that, now you can see here we're going to be applying just a darker orange color. I'm going to be using one of the colors that was already there. This one we're going to use, so what I'm doing is just switching these gradients out because we're keeping this orange right here. Then select the lighter orange and replace it with a darker orange. Now let's check out the next step. And in the next step he's just changing, see the angle here, while you still got all this selected, just change it to 180. Still controlling the way these gradients look. Now we're going to grab the darkest side. I'm hitting A, click on the canvas to deselect. Well, I could hit Y this time, I actually just grabbed it. And clicked on any of these sides. You can click on any one of these sides and it'll grab everything. Give my computer a moment to do its thing. Let me hit pause just for a second, and I'll jump back in here once it stops. All right. That gave me a chance to grab a cup of coffee as well. Okay. And we're on step 13. And you can see we're going to add a little bit of red, which often goes well when you want to show the a darker shade when you're working with orange. So again, we're going to drag the orange that we want to keep over to the left, and then drop in the darker shade. And in this case, we're going to be setting the gradient at 90. So go ahead and do that. And we're done with the lettering. You can see it's really bright and sharp, and a huge difference when compared to the output of the 3D Extrude and Bevel effect. So well worth the time to go ahead and get in there and manually change how those gradients are placed. The next thing we're going to work on is creating a background. So I'm going to zoom out for that. Actually, I'll keep my swatches out here. What I do is select the rectangle tool and then just click on the canvas, and what it does is it brings up the options. You can manually type it in. If you know the size of your document, then this is really easy. I did this earlier, so it's already set to 392 pixels by 612 pixels, and just click OK. And you can see it just places it wherever you happen to click. But if you hit Command X, that grabs it, and then you hit Command V. First, Command 1, make sure you're centered on the screen. Then Command V places it in the center of the screen. Then Command X again, grabs it again, and then Command B, we're dropping it in pack. So that's how I do things. There's probably a quicker way, but that's what I do. The next step is to turn that shape into a radial gradient. So go ahead and click on the radial gradient, and it looks like the white is in the center in this case, so yeah, that looks correct. Now let's give it a blue. Let's try to match the blue. See how close we are. Yeah, it looks like we're close enough. And the next step is to control that gradient. You can see here that if you were to look at this illustration from the point of view of the rule of thirds, you can see that this is the left third, and then here's the center third, and this would be the right third over here. So the focal point is being placed in the left third. And this also works really well with this illustration to put the focal point here because we read from left to right. So dropping it right on the V makes a lot of sense. So let's go ahead and do that. Control that gradient. Hit G to grab our gradient tool. First of all, I'm going to select this text, hold Shift and Option at the same time, and get it to kind of match size-wise, which that looks right. Let's see how it is. Looks like it's about centered horizontal. Vertically, I mean. Okay, that looks good. Now select the background again, hit G for the gradient tool, and now right in the center of this V is where we're going to start, but hold down your Shift key and then just drag so we get a straight line. Actually, you know what, you don't even need to get a straight line, just whatever line, whatever works, whatever you think looks right is fine. You can see you can just play around with it until you get it right. And that looks pretty close to the original to me. It looks good to me, so let's move on. This next step is integral for completing the step that follows. So what I do is hold Option and Shift, and then from the center of this V, stretch outward. Make sure it just goes off the edge of the document. And I'm going to change this to white for the stroke with no fill. And the next step, this is a really cool step, by the way. When I first went over this tutorial, I just wasn't aware of this. I never made a radial gradient so quickly and simply. So this is a good step to pay attention to if you ever need to make a radial gradient. It's real quick. So I'm just paying attention to what his settings are. And what we're going to do is go over to the stroke palette. used 800 points. He left the meter at 4, created a dashed line, and he set it at 50. Let me see how that looks. Yeah, 50 looks good. Now what you want to do is just hit Command X. Make sure you got it selected right. Not sure what I did wrong there, but I'm going to hit Command X, select that canvas, and hit Command F to paste it in front. Or you could have selected this text and hit Command B to place it behind. Now, I'm going to just reposition it a little bit. For some reason, I'm getting this circle here. Actually, it really doesn't matter because we're going to be covering up with the clouds shortly anyway. So that looks good to me. The next step is to lower the transparency of the effect down. So let's go ahead and do that and drop it down to 20. And we're going to make the cloud shapes. This is really simple to do. It's going to make numerous ellipses. And in this instance, I'm not going to try to follow exactly. Make sure you turn your strokes off. Do that here. Swap fill and stroke. Or you can hit Shift X. It looks like Shift X. There we go. And just do this the best that it looks to you. Actually, what I'm going to do is place this all on its own layer. So go ahead and open the layers palette. Something we probably should have been doing from the beginning anyway, but in this case, it's going to make selecting all this a lot simpler. I'm going to lock this for the time being, drop all this in a new layer, and just start covering up all this text, randomly placing some of these different shapes so that they look like fluffy white clouds. I'm not going to get too picky on this because probably test everyone's patience. This kind of screencast is already going to be long enough as it is, so if it doesn't turn out perfect, I think you'll still get the idea. All I'm doing is first to draw it is just selecting, and then I hold down Shift to constrain it, and then when I want to copy it, I just hold down, hit V to grab the direct selection tool, then I hold down Option to just kind of drag it, and then I hold down Shift or Option Shift to change the size, and it keeps it constrained. So that's what I've been doing throughout building this. And in the written tutorial, right? Oh, maybe he doesn't go. Yeah, he goes over Command V. He doesn't go over that. So try to, if you're not familiar with that, then just try to remember those shortcuts. They come in handy all the time when working with Illustrator. And you can see we're going to go ahead and select all this, which in the layer you can just click this button here. That grabs everything. I'm not sure if he did this in the tutorial, but what I'm going to do is actually turn all this into one shape, which you can just click the merge button. Now it's all one shape. I'm going to cut it out, unlock this layer, select the text, and hit Control B. That drops it behind. You can always get in there and make whatever changes you want, but I'm just going to leave it like that. Now we're going to add some more cloud sets to add some more depth to the clouds and some more interest to the illustration. So we're just going to do the same thing. Grab the Ellipse Tool, which looks like you can just hit L for that. Hold down Shift and Option, and that's going to create our circular shape. And again, hold down Shift and Option, and Just drag these around however you think. I forgot that guy's name that always made the fluffy white clouds. Bob something. But yeah, we are making fluffy white clouds, and it doesn't get any more fun than that. And now that I've selected that, I'm going to merge it, cut it, Command X, select the clouds, and then Command B is going to drop it behind. And now what we're going to do is apply a linear gradient. And the step following that, we're going to control that gradient. So let's go ahead and do that. Now it's all radial. I'm going to change it to linear. It's a little too dark. So let's tone that down a bit. Let's check out the original. Oh, he's got it really light. Yeah, really light. So let's go ahead and make it really light. There we go. That's looking good. Hit the G tool. The G tool, hit G for the gradient tool. And then control your gradient. We've got, basically what we're doing is putting white kind of at the outer edges, and then the blue is serving as a separator between this white and this cloud. And what we're going to do is just add this a few times. You could, of course, just make completely new shapes, but I'm just to save a little bit of time, I'm just going to place these in here randomly as is, which gives us an idea of what was originally done for this tutorial. Yeah, looks good enough. Yeah, copy and paste the ellipses around, that's what we just did. Okay, the next step is something that's done in quite a few tutorials on Vector Toots. Basically right now, these letters don't really feel grounded on this cloud. So what we're going to do is make an ellipse, apply a radial gradient, and you can see it's going to start dark and then go out to white. The reason for that is that this is a white cloud, so we want that edge to kind of blend into that white cloud. So let's reverse these, and then let's try to find a color that works well with this. Looks pretty good. And then go ahead and just select the outer edge and just squish it down. And something that Rype mentions in the tutorial is that there might be a few places where, like you see here, maybe here, that the letters are so close that they might overlap. So what makes sense is to go ahead and just put a darken on it now. That way if they do overlap, it'll look just a tad better. And cut it, paste it behind. And you see how that's looking. Let's compare it to the original tutorial, pretty similar. And then the next step, of course, is to just go through and we're going to apply this to all the letters. And what I'm doing here is just holding down Option and just dragging. If for any reason you think that it would look better to resize any of these based on the size of the letter, like maybe this one, resize it a bit, then go ahead and do that. Just drag the corners in and go ahead and resize it until it looks right. to your eye. Well, yeah, there we have it. Let me clear all these palettes out of the way so we can see the final effect. And because it's a tutorial, it takes a little bit longer because I'm explaining everything. But as you can see, this is actually pretty quick to make this kind of illustration. And there's spacing as Rype used for branding down at the bottom. And overall, it's a pretty quick and cool illustration to make. The next step might be to, well, once you've done this on your own, you may want to come up with a creative project that you could apply these techniques to. For example, you might make some cool pixel characters and go ahead and I don't know, maybe draw them. You know, draw some kind of pixel character. And then actually extrude and bevel it and go through that process of coloring the characters and make a little scene. That might be a good way to apply this in your own artwork. But I look forward to seeing any creative stuff you guys come up with and put in the User Plus Flickr community. And yeah, we're all set. Have a good one.